All right, this is Jeffrey Harris, and we are back for the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Today we are speaking with the former UFC fighter, current MLW superstar, former MLW heavyweight champion, the one and only Tom Lawler. Tom, you are going to be fighting Killer Kross tomorrow at the 2300 Arena for MLW Fightland. How much are you looking forward to this matchup?
I'm not going to be fighting. I'm going to be displaying technique. I'm going to be showing people how to apply proper submission holds, how to throw proper technical strikes. Killer Kross is the one that is in for a fight, not me. I'm simply going to do what I do every single day, and that is practice my technique, perfect it against a live opponent, and you will see that in Philadelphia. Not a
fight. I'm sorry about that. So we're going to see some great technique for you. But Killer Kross is going to be making his debut tomorrow night, and you are the MLW veteran going in. So what is it like for you at this point now? You're the veteran, and you're going to be facing a newcomer, at least for MLW, in Killer Kross. And do you feel determined to show that this is your turf?
I think everybody out there knows that when I step out there, when I go into the ring, when I get through those ropes, it's my turn every single time. This is no different. Killer Kross comes in, a very heralded opponent. People think that this is a great stylistic matchup, that he brings a mixed martial arts style that can match mine to the ring. But I'm here to tell you that that's not true. It's simply not the case. The fact is that I am a more talented individual. I hit harder. I have better submissions. My cardio is better. I'm tougher. There's not an aspect of professional wrestling. There's not an aspect of mixed martial arts that he has an advantage over me in. So, personally, I don't give a damn about Killer Kross and his big debut in MLW. He is going to fail he's going to fail to accomplish any goal that he has set forth.
Well, Tom, do you think because you have that UFC MMA background, that makes you basically sort of like OP or overmatched for pretty much any opponent who steps into the ring to face you in MLW?
No, it's not the fact that I have an MMA background. It's what I did in my time. I was restricted by weight classes. I was still somebody who was able to crack the UFC rankings. People seem to forget that. People seem to think that I was the guy that went out and did some cool, funny entrances and, had some memorable weigh-ins. But people seem to forget the fact that I was choking people out, that I can knock people out, that I'm a threat to take you down and hold you there against your will. So, I'm multifaceted, and it's like, it's not the fact that I train MMA. It's not the fact that I have MMA fights. It's the fact that I am who I am. And quite frankly, I'm just tougher than everybody else that's in MLW.
Now, tomorrow you're going to be returning to the 2300 Arena, formerly the ECW Arena. This is a legendary venue that has a ton of history in terms of pro wrestling. This is the place where you won the MLW Heavyweight Championship from Loki. So, what's it like that you're sort of creating like your own history and mythology in this legendary arena?
Yeah, I love history. I love reading about not only the history of different countries and how they came to be through various wars or, corralling society to do their bidding. I am a huge fan of wrestling history. I'm a fan of martial arts history. But I'm a fan of all these things, not to sit there and look at them and be awestruck, but I'm a fan of all these things so that I can learn what works and what to do. And I may have won the MLW World title in Philadelphia, but quite frankly, that doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. I'm not somebody who's going to be awestruck when I get in there think about things that happened in the past and what could have been and what was. I have a goal when I step through those ropes, and it's to beat the absolute shit out of Killer Kross, and that's what's going to happen.
Now, do you see this match on any level as a stepping stone? This is a new year, new decade. Is this like sort of a new start for you? I'm going to beat Killer Kross, and then I'm going to head back to the heavyweight championship.
No, not at all. People want to create their own storylines in their mind. They want to try to look at somebody's career and cherry pick the ebbs and flows and he was in a downtime at this point and now he's going to, rise up from the ashes. No. This is about consistency. And if you look at what I've done in MLW since the get-go, if nothing else, I've been consistently at the top of the card, and there's a reason for that. And you're going to see what that reason is Saturday night. When I take Killer Kross down, I take him into what everybody thinks his element is, and that's into a fight, and beat him exactly there, where he already knows that he stands no chance.
Now, lately we've been seeing a lot of talk about the Wednesday Night Wars, AEW, NXT on the scene, but I see MLW over here, and MLW is making a lot of big moves, I think, in terms from the talent they're bringing in, from the people they're signing to contracts. They signed you to a new multi-year contract last November. King Mo is going to be on this card tomorrow. They got Davey Boy Smith Jr., Brian Pillman Jr., Rasa Marshall, Von Erich. What do you think sort of... I think MLW just seems to be surging more and more these days, and it seems like this could be a very big breakout year for the company. But what do you think?
Well, obviously there's a reason why I re-signed with MLW, and that I'll be there for the next few years. And that is because of the roster. Like you mentioned, the roster that has been assembled has a great mix of talent. You get young guys like Brian Pillman Jr., who you mentioned, Mance Warner, two completely different style wrestlers that you'll find in MLW. You have guys like Airwolf, Zenshi. There's a ton of luchadors that come in from Mexico, and all of them are a completely different style than what you'll find from a Davey Boy Smith Jr., from a King Mo, from even a Low Key. So what I think excites me the most is being able to, diversify myself and fight all these different styles. And I think that's what MLW does best. It has a diverse variety of different wrestling that you get, and you really don't get that anywhere else. If you watch most professional wrestling shows, they're homogenized, to a certain degree. And MLW, when I watch it, it is not. So that's the reason I'm there. That's why I stayed. I think the name of MLW's flagship television show, Fusion, is the perfect name for what MLW brings to the table.
It's wrestling. It's the fusion of wrestling. So that contract, Tom, is it 3, 4 years, 5? Do you wanna give us a number?
No.
Okay, fair enough. But
it's my personal business.
Just curious. That's fine. I just felt like I had to ask. So, how is
my management team has advised me not to give that information?
No, fair enough. But I appreciate you just saying that. So, how is Court Bauer? Sort of as the captain of this ship, and how good of a job do you think he's doing right now, especially considering back in the day Dana White used to be your boss?
Well, if you take a look at where MLW started and where it is now, you can obviously see that there's been a tremendous amount of growth. And as far as Court goes, I was thinking about this earlier. I'm sure that virtually every other promotion that you see on television is handcuffed to a certain degree as to what the performers can and cannot do, what they can and can't do as far as their characters go. And I feel like I'm not really handcuffed by any of that in MLW. I can do what I want to a certain extent. I have a ton of input as to how I am as a character and what I can do. And, I think that's very important in today's wrestling landscape. You hear so many horror stories about promos and being scripted and guys being given characters which don't fit them. And in MLW, you don't really have that. You don't have anybody that's, a fish out of water, so to say.
So your promos, do you just come up with all of them yourself in MLW? There's like not a script you work from?
There's varying degrees of things that are scripted and unscripted. I think because I have been around for virtually the entirety of I have been around the entirety of the second run. I think I'm given a little bit more leeway than more people. I'm sure of that, actually. One thing that, you have to remember is that I did not like ad nauseum, but I've done a lot of media when it comes to dealing with like the UFC and other MMA promotions, doing MMA commentary, going on goodwill tours. So I'm accustomed to at least being in front of people and speaking. Whether I'm getting my point across or not is a different story, but I think that, the fact that I've done all that stuff and I've been around with MLW since it restarted means that I have a little bit more input than perhaps some people. But, like, I can tell you from firsthand, watching stuff backstage and behind the scenes, that guys are not being fed what to say. Guys are not being given, like, characters and ideas that don't necessarily, fit them for the most part. So, yeah, I think it's a great place as far as being a worker goes.
Now, before we got that announcement that you would re-upped with MLW, I would think you would have been like one of the hottest sort of talents and free agents out there. Do you know if there was interest or attempts to sign you from, like, I don't know, an ROH, Impact, AEW, NXT, what have you?
There's always people talking and things going on. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. So now that we have,
you also have to remember. Hey, you also need to take into account as well that I have strings being pulled from different avenues. I'm not retired necessarily from MMA, so a lot of this, I'm like a mercenary, to a certain extent. There's fights that have been offered to me that I want to take, but I've previously committed to certain wrestling dates, so. My future is not necessarily as cut and dry as you may think.
Okay, so you're still not officially retired from MMA. So the right fight comes along, you'll still take an MMA fight?
100%. I still essentially put in a training camp all the time. I train 5 days this week, twice a day, every day. So it's not like I'm not in shape. I get offered fights. Sometimes I have a conflicting date that I don't want to back out on. Sometimes I keep dates open in hopes that something will come through, and oftentimes it doesn't. But yeah.
Now, what do you think about King Mo joining MLW, and is he someone you would like to get into the ring with at some point?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said earlier, it's a different type of wrestler, different style. I'm sure that King Mo and I could do quite a few things that he wouldn't be able to do with anybody else in the ring, and that I wouldn't be able to do with anybody else in there. So I think that's one of the things that appeals to me the most. And like I said, we mentioned all these different kinds of styles of wrestling, but I mean, my favorite thing to do is get in there and have like a fight with somebody. King Mo, Low Key, Davey Boy Smith, Simon Gotch, Dominic Garini's around. There's Tim Thatcher, Douglas James. There's tons of guys out there. LA Park. There's tons of guys out there who can fight, and I love that aspect of MLW.
What do you think? Now I think I'm not. This has not happened all at once, but we are seeing former MMA and UFC fighters having sort of we're seeing them either dip their toe into pro wrestling or sort of surging in the pro wrestling business. Not just you, Matt Riddle, Shayna Baszler over in NXT, Cain Velasquez, a former UFC heavyweight champion, has signed with the UFC. Frank Mir, he's starting to do it a little bit, more through Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, I believe. But what do you think of that? And sort of we're seeing, top UFC names and former MMA fighters sort of making this transition into pro wrestling.
This is nothing new. There's been sports stars and athletes intermingling with professional wrestling here in the U.S. ever since it's been going on. It just so happened that the UFC and MMA wasn't around until the mid-'90s, so you didn't have these crossovers going on until, obviously Dan Severn was wrestling. Ken Shamrock was already a professional wrestler at that point. And if you really want to delve into it, really professional wrestling and mixed martial arts in Japan have been intertwined ever since the beginning. Rich Dozan became famous by essentially backstabbing Kimura, the man who defeated Helio Gracie, which is pretty famed in MMA and jiu-jitsu circles. So they've always been connected, and now it's no different. So I love when that question comes up, like there's going to be like this forgotten era with U.S. wrestling fans that don't realize that they are the same thing. They are no different.
Now, I mean, just going back in your career, you would always have some of the best, weigh-ins and stare-downs ever. When you would cut, like, I remember that one time you came out and did the Shockmaster sort of gimmick. So I feel like you've been a pro wrestling fan probably for a long time, right?
Yeah.
When did you like first get into pro wrestling and sort of become a fan of pro wrestling?
I don't remember a time where I wasn't.
Yeah.
To be honest, my whole life. Obviously, like I said, the UFC came around in the '90s, early '90s. So I was not, MMA wasn't available for me to even be a fan of until then. So I was a huge pro wrestling fan. And like I said, in my mind, they are the same thing. You are selling combat. They are both combat sports that are based upon conflict. One of them happens to be predetermined. One of them isn't. But when it comes to doing promotion, everything, interviews, everything, they're the same thing to me. So sure, I've been a pro wrestling fan my whole life, but I was an MMA fan too. I'm a fan of boxing. I'm a fan of kickboxing. I'm a fan of sumo wrestling. I just like to see two people fight.
So the weigh-in shows where I think you became a fan favorite. Just you would put on a show for the fans. I feel like, and I feel like you had a better connection with the fans than I think a lot of other fighters did in their careers. Can you speak at all about why you wanted to put on that show for the fans, and you would come out and you would do fun stuff at the weigh-ins and what have you, and also of course that great "Who Let the Dogs Out" entrance at UFC 100.
Yeah. If you've been a fan of Japanese mixed martial arts, there were two fighters that stand out, I guess, the most to me when it comes to something like this, and that would be Kazushi Sakuraba and Genki Sudo. And when mixed martial arts was in its infancy, early on, the UFC was pretty heavily available on pay-per-view, but after about UFC, I don't know, 15, 16, something like that, maybe even before that, it started getting harder and harder to find. And there were quite a few years where essentially in the U.S. there were dark ages of MMA. UFC was not on pay-per-view. It was tough to come across. It was not known to the mainstream. Politicians were against it. And during that time, MMA was kind of thriving overseas. It was thriving in Japan. And really the only way to follow that would be through the internet. And MMA, essentially, and anybody can argue with me on this, but they would be fucking wrong, MMA in the U.S. survived because of the internet, because of internet forums, because of groups of people banding together to order pay-per-views, to watch it, and to support a sport that was dying before our very eyes. Now, like I said, in Japan, that same sport was fledgling. It was doing great. It was setting records in the box office. It was a multi-million-dollar industry. And luckily, due to the internet, people could follow that. when I got to the UFC, this, the UFC wasn't what it is today. It wasn't this huge, household industry. It was still kind of in the grassroots. And that internet, community, the internet forums, were still filled with tons and tons of fans who had been around watching the sport since the beginning. And I happened to be one of them. So all the stuff that I was doing at weigh-ins, at walkouts, everything, that was done then was essentially done in an effort to, if you want to say, entertain anybody, it would be those fans who have been around since the beginning. Those fans that remember the 2-second clip of the Just Bleed guy randomly popping up at the UFC. Very random fans who saw Genku Sudo walk out as Buckethead at a show in Japan, a K1 show. So that's who I was targeting. That's who I was trying to, entertain, and well, it worked.
Now, how great was that night for your career at UFC 100? You submitted CB Dollaway that night. You got submission of the night. Was that like one of the highlights of your MMA career, your UFC career?
I guess it would have to be in retrospect, right?
Right.
But I'm not the kind of person that sits here and thinks about the past, because realistically, what does it matter today? We can point at it. Sure, it's a great memory.
Yeah.
It was cool. I won a lot of money, but there's more important things going on in my life right now. I don't need to sit here and think about being CB Dollaway in 50 seconds.
Okay.
Everybody already knows I did that.
Well, I was just curious, how that felt that night for you, looking back.
I mean, to be fair, it was 11 years ago, right?
Right.
So, it's hard. I've lived, a small child's lifetime since then, and, I have good memories of it, but like I said, it doesn't have like a huge bearing on my life today, so I have a lot better memories, I guess.
Right. Well, not to dredge stuff up, but I'm just curious, do you have anything else to say about the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency and how things sort of ended up with you in the UFC? And I think a lot of people, I guess, would point, what happened with you as sort of an example of, there are a lot of sort of questions around how U.S. Anti-Doping Agency is handling their business, and is everything really transparent and above board over there?
Yeah, I'm gonna borrow a quote from my buddy Papa John, and I truly feel when it comes to USADA that the day of reckoning is coming.
Very, very interesting.
There will be a day of reckoning.
It definitely wouldn't surprise me at this point. Now, anything? So this is a new year. This is sort of a new era, a new time, new decade for you, Tom. Is there anything, any goals you want to share? Anything you're looking forward to this year besides getting in there with Killer Kross and showing the Tom Lawler show?
You know what's funny is that question, right? Like that right now, right this second, the very first time I have thought about that. It's the very first time I've thought about anything in my life changing because it's a new decade, because it's a new year. It is business as usual. On the first of the year, I got up and I busted my ass. The next day, I got up and I busted my ass. The next day, I got up and I busted my ass. The next day, I got up. I didn't want to. I'm telling you, I didn't want to. But I got up and I busted my ass. Right? I am disciplined beyond belief. The only motivation I need is the fact that I know every single day I get up, I am going to make myself tougher than the next guy.
Now, I don't know what your deal would allow, but would you ever have any interest trying out possibly Josh Barnett's Bloodsport with those sort of kind of grappling matches, or New Japan somewhere down the line?
Well, I competed at the last Josh Barnett's Bloodsport against
Right.
Davey Boy Smith. I do not believe I will be at the upcoming one this year. Yeah, I'm open to anything that I can contractually do. I'm open to, like I said, I'm open to MMA fights. I'm open to professional grappling matches, which I've done in the past. I'm open to bare knuckle boxing, moat fighting, whatever. I would love to go to different countries and wrestle. I have some opportunities to do that upcoming, and I would love to just simply wrestle in new places across the country. All of these things appeal to me. So.
Okay, so what's going to happen when you get in there with Killer Kross tomorrow? Do you have a prediction?
I'm going to outclass him. That's what's going to happen. You're going to see the difference between somebody who lives and breathes fighting and somebody who looks like they do.
Are you in? Have you flown out to Philadelphia yet? Are you there now?
No.
Okay, I was just curious.
Still in Las Vegas.
Okay, so last question, Tom. If you have any plugs, any social things for the fans on where fans can find you or reach out to you, or anything else you have going on that you'd like to share with us, I wanted to give you the time to go ahead and share that now.
No, I'm a very simple man. You can find my Twitter at Filthy Tom Lawler. You can find my Instagram at Filthy Tom Lawler. And that's it.
All right.
Watch your backs.
All right. I cannot wait to see this matchup with you and Killer Kross, man. And thank you so much for this time, Tom. I'm really looking forward to see what you're doing next and what you're going to be doing throughout this year. This is Jeffrey Harris, and you've been listening to me speaking with Tom Lawler. This is the 411 Wrestling Interviews Podcast. Thank you, everybody.